Hello friends, today in this tutorial we will try to build out a GraphQL API server inside Node.js and Express. So GraphQL is basically a form of a API that you can develop, guys. So it's a very good alternative to a different APIs that you built. So basically this is the interface that GraphQL provides here. So whenever you make any sort of API, this also includes a web interface also which you can open inside your browser. So this is the interface, and basically whenever you construct the API, you can also query your API. So basically if you, this is the run button that GraphQL gives you, and also these error messages also it gives you that syntax error unexpected. So inside here you will write your query. So this is a query parameter which GraphQL offers, and this is an object. So here you will write the information, what information you will need. So we have constructed a warriors kind of an array. This is an array here basically, and if I simply provide a, I need to fetch only the ID. So here if I run this now, basically what will happen, it is saying cannot return null for nullable field. So as you can see inside our code, we have made this field here which is null. Let me see the ID here. So ID should not be null. So we need to provide the ID here. So 003. So now you will see that we have three records out there inside our API here. You will see we have three objects here, each having two records, ID and name. ID is a numeric value and name is a string value. You can see that. So these are the three objects which is stored inside this warriors array. So we are passing the ID variable. So if I run this GraphQL query, guys, you will see on the right hand side, it will return this response to us. And inside this data, this constructed, it will be all beautifully constructed, this JSON response. Basically warriors, you can see it's an array, and these three IDs are returned to us. ID 001, 002, 003. Typically GraphQL has very much advantages over traditional APIs. In traditional APIs we don't have access, we need to return all the results, but in GraphQL you can only return the results that you need. In this case we are saving a lot of resources. We are not returning all the result here. So basically in API you will see there are unlimited fields out there, thousands of data which is returned. So if you make a single request, then that data will be automatically every time return when you make a simple request. So now to tackle those disadvantages, GraphQL is there. So here you can even inside this object you only provide the properties that you will need. So in this case we are only needing the ID, so it is ID is returned to us. In this case, let's suppose we only want the names, we don't want the IDs, so we can eliminate the ID and simply now run this. You will now see inside this object now only the names of the person warriors are returned to us, which is Jamie, Jora, and John. So typically, all this data will be coming from a database, MongoDB or MySQL in a typical application, but here we are just storing it inside an array here. So these records can be unlimited. It can be thousands of records coming from database. So in that scenario, if you are making a multiple request out there, if you're returning the same data again and again, then it increases the server load as well. So for tackling that server load, for reducing the or for increasing the performance of the application, GraphQL APIs are very much important. So here we are typically providing the data that we need here inside. So if I put here name and ID, so you will see both the things will be returned to us. So name is also returned, ID is also returned. So let's suppose we have a third field also. So we can also provide it by the comma. So in this way. And the nice thing about this GraphQL API, guys, you can even have these buttons out there. If you click the history button, it will tell you the exact queries that you have passed in the history. So you can even click it like this here. Simply you can edit this like this. You can click in any individual query as well right here. This is the history that it provides you. Basically, it's a nice feature of GraphQL. You can even merge queries as well. If you want to merge some queries, you can even copy the queries as well, prettify like this. So these are the interface of GraphQL, guys. So if you're not familiar with GraphQL, it's basically a API server similar to traditional APIs. So it's a fast way of developing an API. So it requires an external library to be installed inside Node.js and Express. So if you're watching it for the very first time, then please hit that like button, subscribe the channel. I have given all the source code in the live chat. For this, I have written a complete blog post on my website, Web Ninja Developer. All the source code is given. So simply go to that blog post to follow along with the video. So now let's get started by building this GraphQL API. So first of all, we will make a simple Node.js project. So simply I will make a new directory here, which is GraphQL API. Let me make a different directory, GraphQL project. CD into this project, and we will open this inside our Visual Studio Code text editor. And basically guys, first of all, we will initialize the package.json file. So simply we will say npm init-y. So this will create the package.json file. Now we need to install the Express module for making the web server. We also need to install the CORDS module, which is cross origin resource sharing. This allows the API to be consumed at different front ends. Without installing it, you will get a CORDS error. And now we also need to install GraphQL guys. So if you just go to npmjs.com, you will find out this module which is there. So simply search for this module, GraphQL. So here, this is the GraphQL. You can see almost 9 million downloads are there. So you need this dependency. The latest version is 16.6.0. For this specific application, we are using the 14th version. So the command is given in the blog post. If you see, we are using the 14th version. So simply install this GraphQL at the rate 14. So it is installed. We also need to install express.graphql, which is specifically for Express application. So if you search for this package, so it is production ready GraphQL HTTP middleware function. So you can see the downloads 655,000. So you will require this module. Simply copy this command and paste it, and this will install. And the last module is the basically the tools that it offers guys, which is the schema and all other tools which is offered inside GraphQL. You will also need this module as well. So simply paste it, and here we need to create this. So right here, this is the module here that we are using here. So simply click it, and almost 6 million downloads are also there. So simply install this also. Paste this command here and execute this. So now we have all the dependencies ready guys. So now basically we need to write our index.js file. But before that, we need to add a property here guys, which is called as type property. This is typically equal to module. So here guys, this will be a module so that we can use the import statements inside our JavaScript. Without adding this line guys, you can't use import statements. So just, it's very important. So now we will simply start our Express server. So for that guys, we need to import statement Express from Express. So we will import this Express module, and we will start a simple app, make initialization Express, and we will make a port number 4000, and then we will listen on this port number, which is passing the port, and a callback function. App is listening on this port number. So if you just start your application guys, just type here nodemon index.js. So it is saying it is already in use, so we can change the port number, let's suppose to 3000. So now you can see app is listening on port 3000. So we have successfully initialized the Express server. So right here guys, we need to now initialize our middleware functions. So first of all, we need to import the CORDS module. So this is very much necessary guys. So while you just initialize, we can initialize our middleware. So first of all, we need to use the CORDS module, which is very much important in order to consume the API from different front ends. So just write this line, and also we need to use the express.json middleware. and also this middleware which is express.url encoded, and here we need to pass extended to false or true. So these three middlewares are very much important for this application. So simply write these three lines, guys, like this. Now we will initialize the GraphQL, guys. So for this, you need to import these two modules here, which will be coming from this library, which is first of all Express GraphQL. So from this, we need to import GraphQL HTTP. And the second line, we need to import it from the tools library, which we have installed, which is at the rate GraphQL's tool schema. And inside this, we have this method which is called as make executable schema, like this. So now we need to initialize our data, guys, which will be used inside app. So this data can be anything related to the application, which here we are using a simple object here, which will be called as, you can even call it as users as well. And this will be an array of users. So each object will have two properties, ID, which will be 1, and a name property. Let's suppose I give here, and then I give here country as well. So we have three properties here. One is number, then is string. All these three properties need to be surrounded by single quotes. It is not dependent that it is an integer, so it will not contain this single quote. So all the data types will have to be surrounded by single quotes. So similarly, we can repeat it, add multiple objects. So we can change this to, let's suppose, so similarly we can have two more records here. And lastly, just change it to 4. So like this, guys, you can see we have 4 properties here, 4 objects, each having 3 properties, ID, name, and country. So this is our data which will be consumed inside GraphQL API. So now we first need to simply provide the schema, guys, which we are using inside our data. So we need to provide these 3 fields here. Schema is nothing but the data format in which you are constructing your data. It is typically used in databases terms. Type defs we will call this. So inside this template string, guys, we will type, this will be the type here, which is called as user, and it will contain 3 properties. First is ID, and basically this ID will be needed. So we are providing this explanation mark here. This signifies that this is a this property will not be null. So this, there has to the user must provide value for this field here. Similarly, we need to have the name property, which is also a string property, and we should provide this value. And then we will have the next one, which is country, which is again a string value. So we should provide a value like this. So in this way, guys, we have basically introduced the schema, whichever schema we are using it for the data, and we are passing this information to GraphQL to construct the API depending upon the schema. So type is called as users, guys. So whichever type that you provide here inside your users, so this needs to match here. So just change it to users here. So this is an array of objects. Each object have 3 properties, ID, name, and country. So we have provided it inside this. So the next query, guys, we need to provide is the actual query. So what will the user will type inside GraphQL to query your data, API data. So we will pass the user's data, and this will be an array here. So we will pass array here like this. So this is a, basically we are passing this whole array of users here. You will see that. So we are typically saying that users is a array here, and each uh, object is a user object. So you can see we have different user objects here. This is a user object, this is a user object. This is a way by which you construct the GraphQL API. So now we have written this. So after this, guys, what we need to do is that there is called as a term called as resolver. So we need to construct the resolver for the schema users. So for doing this, we will construct a variable resolvers, and here this will be an object. And basically inside this object, guys, we will put a query parameter, and inside this object, we will say users array will have an object, and the next property will be for arguments, and then we will have the context also. This will be an arrow function, and this will be equal to context dot users. That's it. Just put a comma like this. So this completes our resolvers as well, guys. So basically it is mapping this data to this type dev schema that we have defined to the context. This is slightly complicated, but this is the template that GraphQL uses. And lastly, we have this executable schema variable, and we will use this method makes executable schema, and here we will simply pass these two informations. First is type defs and the second is resolvers. So lastly, we need to construct an endpoint, guys, for our GraphQL API. So this endpoint is will be very useful. We are using this middleware function, and we are adding an endpoint here which is GraphQL, and basically we are using GraphQL HTTP. So GraphQL HTTP makes the GraphQL API accessible over internet. HTTP is the internet protocol. So this makes it possible, this GraphQL HTTP middleware. So here we need to pass three things. Schema will be equal to executable schema, and the context will be equal to the data that we have defined, the users array, and graph IQL will be equal to true, this parameter. That's it. Context is the actual data that we have defined here. You will see that. So now if I open this endpoint, guys, GraphQL in the browser, if I type this address localhost 3000 slash GraphQL, you will now see a window will be appearing, guys. So if I see here, what is the error? Unknown type user, did you mean users? Why this error has taken place? Let me see. Let me see, guys, why it is giving this problem. So now you can see that, guys, this needs to be users, guys. So just make this slight modification because we have defined the users array here. So this needs to be users. So after this, guys, you can now write any sort of API. You can query the API which you have constructed. So basically, let's suppose I write here query here, and after this we put here our users, and here we need to only let's suppose we only want the country. If I run this query now, you will see all the countries will be returned to us, which is New Zealand, Australia, England, India, which we have defined inside our data. As you can see here, we have 4 records out there. We are only expecting the country here. So as you can see, it is saving a lot of memory, it is saving a lot of data which is returned from for every request. Let's suppose we only also want the ID as well. So ID will also be returned. We also want the name. So the order is also very important. The first field will be written like this. So this is the JSON response which will be returned to the front end whenever you call this API. This is a really good front end which is provided by GraphQL, guys. You can visually create APIs, and you can also test the responses which will be returned from the API by simply constructing it and then just testing it. So in this way you can do it, and you can also check the history as well. And if you up till now, guys, if you have any sort of question, you can ask in the comment section. I will highly reply to all the questions. So only 4 likes are there, guys. Please hit that like button, subscribe the channel as well. So I am not using Apollo client in this video, guys. It's just a basic video, so that's why I wanted to use Express GraphQL specifically for Graph Express applications. So in the next videos, I will be using the Apollo client as well. So you can see that, guys, this is the API which is ready made now. Now we can call this API using fetch API. So for calling it, we can simply make a index.html file here in the root directory, and simply we can create a simple index.html file, and here we can change it consuming GraphQL REST API in browser. So for this, guys, we will use the fetch API as I already told you, and here we will simply write some script.js. This will be the JavaScript code. You simply create this file script.js. So here you will write your JavaScript code, guys. So right here inside your index.html, we will simply have two tags, pre-tag. Here the JSON response will be shown to the user. And secondly, we will have a simple paragraph where we will be giving a ID result to it. That's it. Now inside our script.js, guys, what we need to do is that we need to simply, first of all, make a function, guys. Here basically this function will be called as query GraphQL server. You can call this server anything, but I will call this like this. So now we simply need to make this function, guys. This will be async because we are using the fetch API async function, and we will say query GraphQL server. So the very first thing we will do, guys, we will make the request const response, and we will use await as this is the async function. We will use the fetch API, and here the response, sorry, the endpoint will be simply http localhost 3000 slash GraphQL. This is the endpoint, and basically the second argument, guys, will be a object. Here you provide the method. This will be a simple post request, and here you need to set the headers. So the headers will be simply content type, and basically this will be equal to application slash JSON, like this. So you're, as you can see that, guys, we are making a simple post request to this route here, and we are providing the headers which is content type application JSON. So this makes sure that your response will be coming in JSON format. Now if you inside our body, guys, we will simply say we need to convert this JSON to stringify, and basically we need to pass the query which will be actually inside a cut set of curly brackets which is called as users, and here we need to only expect the name of the player. That's it. So this is the query GraphQL expects, guys. Inside curly brackets you write the resource name, and then inside another curly bracket you write which information you want to return. So also if you want to return multiple information, you will put comma here, name and country. So in this case we are only expecting the names. So now after constructing this, guys, we will now have the result which will be coming to us. So this will be awaiting. Again we will use response, we will convert this to JSON, and then we can console log the result simply. So now you can see that, guys, we are console logging the result. So if I simply open this file, so make sure that your GraphQL server is running, guys, at port number 3000. Don't close it. So now if you open this, automatically this function will execute, and if you check the console, you will see you will receive an object. So this will contain this data array, and this is a users array which is returned to you. Only the names is returned to you, not the ID and the uh, country. So this is name, you can see Kane Williamson, Steve Smith, Joe Root and Virat Kohli. You can see that 4 records are returned to us. Very simple request, very simple data returned. So it's a very simple process, guys, how you can query the GraphQL APIs from any front end. You can make a React.js application, Vue.js application, Angular application. You can use any front end or a simple JavaScript browser site. So now to display this data, guys, it's very easy. First of all, we will display it as a JSON data. So for this, we will simply get the reference pre. We can get the document.get element by ID. So as you can see, we can also select elements by their query selector. query selector, and here we will pass the element name, which is pre. We have given this element pre here like this. So now we need to convert this data to a JSON, guys. So we will say pre dot text content. So this will be equal to JSON dot stringify, and here we will say result dot comma null comma 2. So as you can see, guys, if you refresh it now, this data will be printed out in the browser. You will see this is the JSON data which is returned to you. You can see that. If you make any sort of change here, let's suppose we also want the country. So country will also be returned to you. You will see name and country is returned. So now we need to display this data. Basically, we will have the data here. Uh, we can simply say here result dot data dot users. This is the array here. We need to use the for each loop. For each user, basically here we can create a span tag, document dot create element, dynamic element span. Then we can manipulate its inner HTML, and it's equal to the user dot name. We can simply write here the player name is, and then we can concatenate the player name like this, and and he and he belongs to such countries. So user country as well. So user country. That's it. So after this, guys, we can add this. So document.get element by ID. So we have given this ID result. We will append this child. So dot append child. We will pass the span tag. That's it. So this will, if you refresh it now, guys, you will see that the player name is Kane Williamson and he belongs to New Zealand. What we can do is that we can have a break tag also. Just break tag. So if you refresh it, guys, you will now see information is displaying it from the API. Here you can see from the GraphQL API we are displaying this API result inside the browser as well. So this is a very simple way by which you can construct a GraphQL API server, guys, inside Node.js Express, and also consume it at the front end side also in browser using these APIs, GraphQL tool schema and express.graphql. If you like this video, then please hit that like button, subscribe the channel as well, and don't forget to hit the notification bell icon as well. If you have any sort of questions, you can ask in the comment section. I will definitely reply to all the questions. In Or if you don't have any sort of questions, I can switch off this stream. And thanks very much for watching this video.